Well, hello, hello. What's up, guys?
Howdy.
How's it going?
What's
It's going
happening?
good. We're a little wet down here. It's been raining all afternoon, but no really bad weather that we had right here in Dothan. Anyway, we had a lot of rain, some heavy rain, but really not a lot of wind or lightning or any so far no tornadic activity or anything like that that I know of. Not at least not right here where I'm at. It just was kind of just straight out rain, just pounding us, and so I think it's about past us. But this morning I was a little concerned that it might get pretty rowdy, but it wasn't too bad. Just a heavy rain. So, welcome aboard, everybody, tonight to the next Stream Team Beekeeping Chat. We're glad you're here. This thing just, we're just getting started. We have 120 folks in here, basically, and so that's pretty cool. But we just appreciate everyone being in here. And while we're kind of waiting for everybody to check in here, I understand you guys, I understand there's quite the event a couple days ago. And I know you guys had a lot better view of the eclipse up there in Ohio than we did down here, although it looked pretty cool down here with the eclipse glasses. It got kind of eerie outside. It felt like it was about like evening time, like probably 5-6 o'clock in the evening, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever. But when you looked at the sun through the eclipse glasses, it just, I think we had about a 75% coverage down here, so it was pretty darn cool, and it's pretty neat. So, but Brian, I understand you actually traveled to the 100% coverage zone, right?
We had like the totality path was over my place, but it was like a minute and 20 seconds or something like that. So I went up to my brother's. He's a little south of Cleveland, and he had like 3 minutes and like 40 seconds or something like that. I mean, it was, well, I'll show you. Let's see here. That right there is what I saw.
Did you take that picture?
That's one of my pictures off of my.
Oh my gosh, man!
Yeah,
that is really cool, man.
It's.
How about that?
I mean, it was very cool. I mean, we drove up. So my brother was there, sister-in-law. Our daughter went. My mom was up there. My brother's neighbor actually had this massive camera that, probably like a Fred Dunn camera. And he was zoomed in so much that you could actually see sunspots on the sun.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. That's pretty wild. You just think, people think we're pretty tough and pretty strong and powerful. And then you see something like that happen. It's just, I mean, you realize just the majesty of everything out there in space. And we're just like a tiny, tiny dot in the universe. Not even as big as a dot, but
I know
it's just amazing that I don't know. It's all just so, it just brings us, it's awe inspiring to see stuff like that.
Right.
Greg, how was it at your place?
Well, it was first. I'm glad that we've all survived the eclipse again. You just never know. You just never know when the ticket's going to get punched, and then there it is. But I'd say, we had a good time. Got together as a family at great grandma's and watched the eclipse, and that was pretty cool. We were probably, I don't know, 95 to arguably 100% totality. I mean, it was, fully nearly eclipsed. It wasn't quite as eerie as I thought it would be. You're in your mind, you're kind of thinking it's going to be this, it's going to be that. It was, of course, not so much that it got dark, but just I've never seen that temperature of light, maybe is the best way to put it. It just had this very eerie, weird bluish to green kind of a cast over everything. The birds never stopped. Near full eclipse, they got really rambunctious, but they didn't really stop, and there wasn't like cicadas or peepers or none of those things. The bees leading up to that early in the day were, it was a beautiful day, so they were fine. And then of course I got into the bees afterwards to start our queen grafting season by getting some cell starters ready. and it was just, the bees were just as calm, cool puppy dogs. I mean, it was, you know, I wish I was set up like Fred Dunn, and would have had uh, uh, the chops to be able to capture, like in your mind, you're thinking, you know, what would be cool is to capture a video where, you know, here's one camera and you see the hive and you see the sun and it's going across and you've got filters on where you can kind of see it. And you've got, you know, maybe you pull a frame out and then have another camera on the frame watching all the things, you know, in your mind, you're thinking you're going to see the bees do their thing and then just slow down and then stop and then have microphone, all these different way complicated things of doing it. And I was like, oh, I really want to do that, but decided to spend the time with family, not doing any of that. And I'm glad I did because I just don't think it was as impactful as I was thinking it might be on critters. What I do think is interesting to think about, though, is so much of nature and animals, including ourselves, um, whether we realize it or not, or whether we accept it or not, we are so impacted by solar and lunar cycles. If it can affect the tide, you know it can affect us. And so I think what's interesting is when we've got the eclipse scenario, you know, what does that really mean? What does that really do to plants and root systems and sap and nectar and all those kind of things? And what impact may or may not that have on plants and animals a little bit later? Probably nothing. It's probably not a big deal, but that's just the way my mind goes. Is what kind of impact, or is what we're seeing right now? What's that going to have later, if any? But anyways, you know, hey, I guess when's the next one like that? 75 years or uh, do you guys, Brian? You're probably like an expert in the eclipse. You know, there are so much videos and memes and all these things,
Yeah,
everything from
yeah.
the end of everything to the end of, you know, it's just.
Oh, yeah.
But I thought what was kind of neat though, is I don't know, and I'm not sure if this is factually based because I don't know how to do that. So Brian's got the photos there. When the last time, something about this specifically, how this eclipse was, was it something like 83 BC or something? Like it was talking about the era of Jonah being spat out by the whale, and Nineveh was like the last time this specifically happened. I'm thinking, how do you go back and figure that
I
out?
don't
But it's
know.
interesting to think about.
Yeah, we're
You know, what made this one, I think, a little bit more special was, yeah, and they just said 2044 is the next one that'll go across the states. But this one, the moon was at a much closer position. So in the orbit around the sun, it was at a closer position as compared to 2017. So the actual shadow was much wider.
Mm,
And so that's like the last one in St. Louis. I was actually, the last one that occurred, I was working in St. Louis. Totality was around a minute.
mm,
So it wasn't that long. It was cool to see. I mean, regardless. But this one here, there were some areas that had 4 minutes of totality. And then you saw, I forget what they called it, but, it was oh gosh, they looked like solar flares, but they said they weren't flares that you could see. It was some other phenomenon. Um,
I don't
and,
know.
and I could actually see those on my pictures. I thought they were actual solar flares that I captured. And a lot of people, showed those like red extensions. There was one at like, I think it was at like 5:30. There was one up kind of about 1:30 ish. Um, there was one at one point about 11 o'clock, but it was this other phenomenon that everybody was like blown away that, actually occurred at the same time. So, yeah, it was, I mean, it was an event that if you were in that path, or even like I said, if you were close, you should have taken the time just to see it because it's so cool.
Yeah, well, it was just pretty neat, and so, like I said, we saw it here, and it did get. It's kind of like you said, Greg. It's kind of just eerie, but it wasn't here.
Yeah.
It was not anything like what you guys had. But anyway, there's a lot of people. I think even some in the chat possibly that may have gotten some video of bees rushing back to the hives. I've seen some videos of that where the bees, it's like they just came back to the hives, colonies as if it was nightfall, and then as soon as it was over, a lot of people, I think, said the bees rushed back out again, and so it was kind of interesting. But so I'd like to just thank you, Brian, for the super chat, and also Matt Kirkland. Thank you guys for pitching in. That really helps. And I thought we'd talk a little bit more about bees now. Let's see. So we'll start up there with you, Greg. You uploaded a video, and I watched that this morning. Very interesting video. I really enjoyed watching and working your hives there a little bit, talking about some queens. And so, what's going on up in your neck of the woods with the bees? I know it's game on up there. The title of this video tonight is basically "The Time Is Now, Ready or Not, Here We Go." I mean, it is bee season across a great big part of the country, and I think they're even bringing hives out of storage and stuff up north, and so I think we're right here on it. So, Greg, what's going on up in Hopewell, Ohio?
Yeah, it's go time. What we're seeing throughout the colonies is, when you get through all of your colonies as they come out of the wintertime, you start to get an overall snapshot of not just how the bees did over the winter, but how you did as a beekeeper. And we're learning a lot about things that we want to do different, things that we want to build on, things that we want to double down on. And so we've, as part of our, queen breeding program, we're always, trying to see if there's any other opportunities to keep moving the needle forward, but also being mindful and being reserved and guarded, that we don't want to just bring in a specific genetic or attribute because it's popular or because you hear a lot about it. So we were kind of reserved. We've gotten burned severely in the past with alleged VSH colonies, and so I kind of had an unfavorable taste in my mouth because of that. But last year, what we did is we brought in another pretty large batch of virgin VSH queens and brought those into our mating yard. And out of nearly 46, 48, 50 of those, 12 of them made the cut going into the wintertime, meaning there wasn't supersedure issues. There wasn't compatibility issues. We had a lot of virgins that they just no matter what we did, the bees didn't like them. They were not going to have that virgin inside of that colony, and that gets into a whole other conversation on how to introduce virgins. We've talked a little bit about is it possible that bees can be racist, and they may be able to pick up on nuance or different attributes of other bees and not be so accepting. And so I think we ran into some of that as well. But long story short, we ended up with 12 going into the wintertime that made the cut for not only gentleness, prolificness, how do they brood, were they easy to work, things of that nature, as well as being, okay, where are they at with their mite counts? And we were looking for only overwintering anything that had 0 to 3 mites in a wash late in the fall. And so that got narrowed down to about 12. 11 of those made it through the winter. And then of those 11, a couple of them dropped off quickly because they just had severe trouble brooding. And now we're down to really 2 out of nearly 50 that we're kind of looking at to see if maybe we want to actually breed off of those, meaning they're building back up, they look good, they have a nice attitude, they seem healthy. We're going to do a lot more hygienic testing on them and make sure that this is the route we want to go. And then when we do that, we're not just going to flood our yard with these. We're still going to be guarded and cautiously optimistic, because the last thing that we want to do is flood our yard or our main queen yards with some of these genetic attributes that may go back to grandpa's, that we haven't seen the full expression of those queen genetics yet. So that it's a lot of fun. It's interesting. I think it's the hard way to do it. I think in hindsight, you'd be a lot. You're going to take a risk no matter what you do importing queens. And I'll say the best queen you're ever going to see is the one that those bees make right there in your own yard. Second best would be the ones that you grafted. And then there's just something that happens to queens, no matter how well it's done. I think when they get shipped, when they go air, you have to receive them, reintroduce them, after they've started laying. There's something that happens there. So that being said, when I look back at the investment and that many virgin queens and what the potential was, I've got 2 really stars, it seems, out of nearly 50, which is great. What will that mean for the future? We'll see. But that's a part of queen breeding, is you're always looking for the outliers. You're looking for the ones that you can replicate. You're looking for the ones that are meeting the criteria. I think there's something to be said about it, having a mated queen that has those attributes where you're getting the full genetic makeup into your yard to then start making daughters off of. I think that makes a lot of sense too. So it'd be interesting this season to see how all of that unfolds, and then also what we do with insemination, because that brings a whole new layer of possibilities where we can now start putting specific drones to specific queen lines to start pushing specific attributes way further and faster, and that can buy us years and years and years and years, and possibly provide opportunities that just normally wouldn't exist, no matter how many hundreds of colonies you have or thousands of queens that you raise. The numbers, it is what it is. So that's kind of where my mind's at right now, Bruce, is thinking about the queen game, the genetic game. The bees are busting, and so we've started our grafting season by getting our cell starters juiced up and ready to rock and roll. And it's if that wasn't enough and complicated enough, we've got 2 more package runs and a nuke delivery day and all the rest of the mayhem and chaos that happens. And we're leaving this week to go down for another package run for folks to pick up this coming Saturday. So it's
Packages.
Yep. Brian, we might see you, huh?
I think you will. Yeah, I think you will. Greg, you are busy at a level that I was talking to a beekeeper today, and I said, just explaining, like our format, how the 3 of us are, and I said, I will never be a sideliner, and I will never be a commercial person.
Yeah.
So,
but you can be a closet sideliner. That's kind of what you are.
A lot of people say that just because they're like hobbyists, don't have these like all these gadgets and bottling things and all this other kind of stuff. I just want things easy. That's what that is.
Yeah, Greg.
There's no easy button with bees. I don't care what scale you're at. If you found an easy button with bees, then maybe you've got it figured out. And you should write a book.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I just had a patient today in the hospital I saw. And I was talking to him, and the daughter said that they had bees, but they were a lot of work. I guess they don't have them anymore. But the daughter of the patient said that her dad had, I guess, raised bees years back, but they realized, I think his health has gone down as well. But it's just people just don't realize what kind of work it is. And anyone, if you actually have bees and you care for them, you understand that whether you got 1 hive or 1,000 hives, it's a lot of work, and there's a lot of maintenance that needs to take place. So, but Greg, it's just the lifestyles of the rich and famous, man. That's what it is.
Neither
right
poor and infamous. There is no. Yeah. If someone said, "Hey, what's a fast track to," I mean, we're wealthy in the ways that I think matters. Health.
right.
We've got each other. We've got something that we're building to. We've got a beautiful community surrounding us. That matters. But as far as being fiduciary fat and no, that's
Sure.
it's typical. No matter what you do, it's beekeeping. Beekeepers are they're homesteaders. That's the same mindset where if there's something to acquire or something to do, leave it to us to spend 10 times the amount of money just to do it ourselves rather than to source it out, and spend 10 times the amount of effort or input to do it rather than just source it out. But that's the way beekeeping is, it seems.
Sure.
And we're trying to get smarter with all those things and make this make sense. But you have to just kind of remind yourself, if it was easy, everybody'd be doing it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Brian, what's going on up there in the Northeast Ohio, up around Cleveland? What's going on in your neck of the woods, man?
Yeah. Things are about to get busy. I yesterday was able to get over and check on the colonies, and they're all still there, even the little one that I'm kind of babying. They all literally wiped out the pollen patty that I had on them, so it was I think with the rainy weather and that we have now, it was good that I was able to go over yesterday and just refill, that pollen patty that they have on. The activity on every single one of them, I mean, they were just going gangbusters. They all are at the point where, the ones where I had the deep and then the super on them that I'm going to kind of switch up here in a little bit. I mean, they're all just loaded with brood. I saw a few colonies. I saw probably 6 or so cups throughout. So they're just starting to get to the point where they're practicing that. So it's going to, the switch is going to get flipped here very shortly. I'm thinking, I mean, it's going to be in April when I'll be making splits, and that's probably the earliest that I will have ever made splits up here. Normally it's sometime in May, but this year is just exceptionally early. It's looking good though. I mean, I'm sitting at a point also where I've organized equipment and got stuff ready. So, I think I'm prepared, but we'll see.
Yeah, always something. And Greg, thanks so much for that super chat, man. I really appreciate it. So down here in Alabama, we are. It's interesting to me how people will see videos from down here in the South, post my video or Lisa's or anyone else that's down here doing stuff, and they'll be like, "Oh, I just watch your videos. I can't wait to get in my bees." And then I'm like, "Well, just hold on." And now here we are, first part of April, and people are just busting into them. So just amazing how fast it goes from just southern beekeepers with brood in the hives till now everybody's scrambling and cracking hives. Probably not everybody, but a large part of the country is able to do that now, and so that's pretty neat. Just to kind of see how it progresses, and every year it's just a little bit different. But it's coming whether you like it or not. It's going to come. So
yeah.
But down here, we this past weekend, I can tell by looking at the flowers, the privet it has little buds about to bloom, and I walked out of the hospital. I think it was Monday, and I smelled that. You can smell privet is such a strong flower that you can smell it in the air when it's really blooming. You can smell it. It smells like a sweet flower, and it's just everywhere. And I caught a whiff of it. There was a privet bush, I guess, walking out to my car, and it's not in full bloom in all of the area where I have bees. I think it's really exploding quickly down in the southern yards down in Slocum, down that way. But up, I'm in Ozark and stuff, and it's just kind of working its way north. But it's starting to bloom everywhere. And man, it's just something to behold when that privet in a good bloom, you can literally smell it. It's just, you walk outside, and I guess people that have allergies don't like that smell very much, but to me, it smells like money to me. But anyway, yeah, no, that's what they say about chicken houses too, right? But privet honey does smell good. So that's what chicken farmers will tell you. You're like, man, that smells bad. And they'll be like, well, it smells like money to me. So anyway, but anyway, yeah, you can smell that sweet privet smell, and it's just starting now. But I think, usually it lasts for 3 weeks, and it's a pretty strong flow, and it's really inconsistent though. Some years, like last year, we got very little, if any. I think the bees kind of utilized it to stay alive last year, so that's one reason our flow was low. But this year, with the rain we've had, the warm weather, everything just seemed to be, we're setting ourselves up, I think, for a good year. But now you never know. But I think that's what's coming. Right. So I stacked honey boxes on. I knew it was coming. I've kind of started a little bit of that over the last few weeks, but this past weekend, that was my main job that I did. As I just went out to the different yards. I have one yard where I put cells in that I had not checked, and I went and checked those colonies, and actually 2 places. I think I went to I actually kind of went through all the colonies. That's what I did. I did Friday. I went and did that, and every yard I went to, I checked for queen cell acceptance, and then I stacked honey boxes. That's what I did, and I actually ended up with a little better percentage of cells takes from those cells I purchased than I thought. I'm not sure if the takes were all from the queen cells, or maybe some of them made their own queens, but I think it pays to be patient sometimes, but there's some really nice breed patterns in some of those colonies, and some queens are starting to lay, and so that was a relief. I did have a few that were either on the verge of being drone layers or just queenless, and so I did combine some stuff and shake some bees out, but it was nothing like what I expected. It was much better than I thought it was going to be, which, I breathed a sigh of relief. 2 weeks ago, I split and I put those cells that I grafted in some colonies. So we'll see how they do. And the video is going to drop probably tomorrow, if not tomorrow, Friday, about that experience. And I think it's a fun video. It's a little bit longer, but I put all the different steps in there from the time I pulled the cells out. I made the splits, pulled the cells out of the cell builder, and then put the cells into the new colonies. I kind of explained that whole process, and hopefully folks will stick around and watch this. I think it's a pretty good, maybe an informative video. Let's hope those cells take, but I'm going to leave them alone long enough that whether it's my cells or whether it's, they make their own, I just need to have queens, and so we'll see what happens. But I have stacked.
Wow.
Thanks so much, Stan. I appreciate that, man. That's awesome. You're awesome. Gotta flag that one. Yeah. Thanks, Stan. May the Lord find favor on your honey crop with very few small hive beetles. Yes, Stan, I would agree with that 100%, man. Listen, I'll tell you, I'm not seeing as many hive beetles now. It's so weird how I had so many in the wintertime. Particularly in that 1 yard, but I just am seeing very few hive beetles. Even in Ozark, they're not that bad. Now, I only have like 6 colonies left up there, but I did stack some boxes up there yesterday evening, and some of them are really strong up there. I got, I think, up in Ozark, 4 really strong ones. One that's it's mediocre, it's going to be okay, and then one that it's kind of struggling, but it's better than 0. And but they look really good. The ones that are still there are looking pretty good. So, but that's where I'm at with everything. I got footage for like. The video is going to drop tomorrow, and then 2 more. So I had the privilege of interviewing Yappy on Monday night. We talked, and we had a nice interview. So that'll be dropping here as soon as I can get that thing
nice
uploaded and edited and uploaded. But that's where we're at. So like I say, the topic tonight is ready or not. Here we go. Beekeeping season is here. The time is now, and really we could kind of turn this into. The remaining part of the chat. If anyone has any questions, you can drop them in the comments. Thanks so much for your apiaries for the $20 super chat. Install first 3 packages on 31st of March. All 3 queens are released on April 6th. This is really awesome. So, hey, congratulations and good luck with your bees. You've embarked on an incredible journey, man. It's just awesome. So I hope that you have success with that. Anyone heard from Dirt Rooster or Mike Berry after the bad storms today? Slidell, Louisiana, and parts of Mississippi got hit by a tornado. I have not heard from them. I need to be checking in on them probably.
I text Mike Berry, and
he's good.
He's good. Yeah.
Good deal.
Randy sent some reels on Instagram. So
he's fine.
I would imagine he's fine if he's sending Instagram stuff.
Awesome. But if you want to put some questions in the comments section, if you could put them in all caps, it'll be easier to cap. But anyway, you put them in here in all caps. If you do that, we'll be able to see them, and we'll address as many as we can this evening during the chat. So the topic is the time is now, ready or not. Here we go. Years ago, I can't remember the name of the guy that kind of coined this term. I know a lot of people have used it, so it's probably not just him, but he said basically the bees don't wait on anybody. And that's true. I mean, it's true, right? They're going to do what they're going to do. I think what we are able to do is manage them and try to stay ahead of them and try to steer them in the direction we want them to go to benefit us and what we're trying to do while keeping them healthy. But sometimes it can be kind of like herding cats, sometimes it doesn't work out like you want it to.
Mm-hmm.
And so what are some thoughts you guys might have about kind of critical things that we need to be looking at right now, or the importance of taking care of things when they arise?
Oh my gosh.
Brian, why don't you start off with that one?
Oh my gosh. We're sticking to an hour and 15 minutes, right?
Yeah, well, we're gonna try.
Well, so this time of year, and I will say this, I'm gonna use, we've already used his name once. This isn't a how-to. This is just what I do in Northeast Ohio. Some of the things that I do are because I've been keeping bees now for 8 years. So, you kind of learn a pattern of when you should perform certain actions. Now, those actions, like this time of year, typically what I'm doing is I've already got a mite treatment in. It's earliest that I've ever done that. I want to make sure that I start the year out, and have my mites in check. I've got the nutrition going. So, I learned a couple years back that, and we've discussed it, you can throw in pollen patties, but just because you put in a pollen patty, does that mean that the colonies are just going to explode and go crazy?
Right.
No, you have to have, all of your ducks in a row. There has to be environmental factors and everything else that more or less signal for that colony to, hey, it's time to brood up. I keep that supplement in there because, like right now, we had 78-degree weather yesterday. Well, now today we had storms all day. We've got storms coming tomorrow. So that said, if my colonies that are really brooding up, I've got some that have in my upper box, they've got, over 6 frames of brood. Well, what if they get into a situation where they're running low on their reserves to keep that brood moving forward? I don't want to run into that. So that's why I do supplement, and that's all the stuff that I look at. Also, as far as managing my colonies to keep the bees out of the trees, I'm looking at those signs as far as the cups and all that. I'm seeing we do have some drone brood now. So that's a sign there. Hey, the colonies are going to start, they got the big boys that are going to be coming out. And then, like, I saw those couple cups. So those are those signs that, hey, my colonies, if I don't, stay on top of them and act in a timely manner, my colonies are going to split themselves. They're not going to wait for me to say, hey, Brian, Greg just got those EnduraHive kits. Did you get yours set up yet? We're going to wait for that. We hear it's a nice box. We're going to wait. They're not going to wait. So, you've got to, what I've learned in the past this time of year is, you have to make sure that you're always weeks ahead, because Mother Nature is never going to wait and the bees will never wait. So, the amount of time that I've spent over just prepping equipment, getting stuff ready, cleaning up the yard, I've probably spent, 20 or so hours on just prepping equipment and stuff. And that's just at my scale. And had I not done that, come another, I would say we're probably going to see swarms here, I would bet in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I know in Southern Ohio, they've already seen some. And like, I think around your area, Greg, I think some folks already saw a couple. And we're usually about 2 weeks back. So I'm thinking, looking at the weather patterns and that, in about 2 weeks, we'll see it. And from the signs that I saw, that's telling me that timeline is about accurate. So I'm just going to have to be ready, and it's important. I mean, you just have to stay on them this time of year. This time of year is, and just like fall also, they're important times of the season where if you slack, your colonies are going to tell you, your apiary will tell you, you're going to, this time of year, you're going to, have colonies that split themselves, so it's just so important to stay on top of it. So
Yeah.
that's my rant. I'll get off the
No, that's that was no rant. That's all true. And Greg, how about you? What does that bring to mind when you think of the time is now?
I wish all the colonies were on the same schedule.
For sure,
and
man.
each yard was on the same schedule. And you do, I think as you start building experience with your operation, you start building in not only redundancy, but you start to build in as much consistency and as much buffer as you possibly can. And what I'm seeing this year is I am so thankful. It's a double-edged sword. I've got a bad habit of digging in too deep into my stock to make people happy, to get queens shipped out, to get nukes out, to do this, to do that. And then it leaves our bumper stock sometimes too thin. And then because of that, you've got some really small colonies or some ones that weren't quite up to snuff that you try to overwinter. And you put all this effort into overwintering all these fair to midland colonies, and then you end up, they go through the winter and they crash, and you got to clean them up, and then you've got this, and then you've got that. And so what I'm starting to see is there's something to be said about understanding that every colony is not going to be the same, and that you kind of have to get an overall feel for each individual colony and make a move, but you try to make the same move throughout every colony or every pallet or every yard. So you're not running back and forth. I need this, I need that. Like, okay, today I'm bringing out boxes and frames and feed, and we're going to go put feed on and add a box. And if you get out there and then you've got colonies that don't need any boxes and they don't need any feed or have to, you just ends up chasing your tail. So when I think of the time is now, for me, I'm actually thinking, I'm in the mindset right now, the time was yesterday. The time was at the end of last season. The time was September, October last year. Whatever we did in September really set us up for what we're seeing right now. And what was interesting is you try to be as consistent, you try to be as intentional, you try to be deliberate with the things that you do, but we're always at the mercy of Mother Nature and what she offers to the bees. And what we're seeing is colonies that were extremely heavy and nearly pollen bound with goldenrod pollen. Those colonies look a certain way. Colonies that weren't quite at that developmental stage where they could take advantage, had the field force to bring all that in. Yeah, they overwintered, but their internal stores are just really, really lean. And so when we're looking at the time is now, it's like, okay, what do we do? Are we putting feed and pollen patties on? Are we trying to build these guys up? Or can we foresee the flow? How far are we from it? And do we just have them ride that line where there's just enough coming in so they don't plug out before a flow and then hit the trees? Or are there colonies that we are intentionally trying to push as hard as we can to make drones to ride that swarm line because we want drone saturation and queen? There's all these different things that you're constantly thinking about in different scenarios. But the main thing that I keep thinking about is when we talk about the time is now, wow, I'm really thinking about, man, we've really got to be on point August, September, and October, or you're going to be in a position every single spring where you're chasing your tail, you're running in circles, and you haven't built enough consistency within your operation to be able to just say, okay, here's what we're doing, and boop. And maybe it never gets to that point, but I'm optimistic. What about you,
Man,
Bruce?
that's a term, consistency. That's so hard. I agree with you, and I wanted to go through some comments here, and you kind of hit on this a little bit in in what you said. Seth Hill, he said, "Crack the lids and keep them light." And I was thinking, what does that mean? And so I asked him in the comments, and he said this. He said, "Cracking lids helps with your ventilation almost, but not quite starve them. If it's swarm season, keep a frame or so of food in there. But if they start getting full, yank it out and slide in some kind of
Probably
empty
foundation.
comb or foundation." And so basically, it's almost like what you said. He said right here, and I think you're walking a fine line here. He says, "Yes, sir. A friend of Bob's told me one time starvation is a real good swarm control." So, I think you got to be careful because we talk about the danger of starvation in the springtime can be real if the population's right. So you got to kind of know exactly how to manage that. But if you do keep the bees, I know last year I helped Seth do a bunch of splits about a year ago, and they were some really strong colonies, and we busted out one, if not two splits out of he had like 60 plus colonies, and we ended up with over 100, like 103 splits out of like 60 plus or minus colonies. And so we brushed them down hard, but in a sense that makes sense because if you keep the population down to where the bees don't feel pressured, they don't feel that population pressure, it can help. And of course, with those new splits, he put in new queen cells, so he had brand new queens to help grow his operation. And but it makes sense too, though, that if the bees are not packed out with food, if they don't have tons of honey, tons of stores, they're going to be less likely to swarm, I think. And so you can kind of artificially do that by pulling resources. But I do think you need to be really careful as well. If you do that, you have to kind of know what you're doing, because if you end up pulling out food too soon or too much, and then they hit a dearth, like some of these little dearths we have here in the spring when there's a huge amount of population, and they can go south on you. But that is a really interesting way to put that. One thing that I did this year, I think that was somewhat successful, though I have had a few swarms. I went in, because I had my bees here, I didn't send them out to California. I went in fairly early in the year on a warm day, and I added a box of comb. We weren't even in really much of a flow then, just a little trickle coming in. That's how they build up here in this area. And put a box of comb. Even in between it's dangerous to do this in a cold area, but I just added some space, so the bees had a place to move up, and that really seemed to help. It did two things. Number one, I think it hopefully helped keep them in the box, keep them from swarming, keep them out of the trees. And number two, a few weeks later, 2 to 3 weeks later, I was able to come and pull splits out of those early splits I made, and so it worked out well. But those are some little tricks you can use, I think, in the spring but you got to hit them at the right timing. If you get them too late, they'll be in the trees whatever you do. And so, Seth, I hope I did what you were saying justice there, but that does make a lot of sense. Also, he mentioned crack the lids, I guess, for ventilation. And so those are a couple of things that he does this time of year, and timing is a sure thing. Seth has a great teacher with Bob. Bob Benny is his teacher, and so I'm sure you've learned some incredible things working with Bob over there, Seth. So, but that's kind of what I do. Some things that I just try to kind of keep the swarm control. But you mentioned consistency, Greg. Man, that is so hard. I still haven't figured that out yet. But this year, I'll tell you, I kind of, my buddy Tyler Walker down here, the commercial guy, young guy here close by, he's kind of a quote unquote commercial mentor to me, because he's right here close, just a few miles away. And he has grown from basically zero to 1,500, 2,000 colonies since 2018. He started in 2018. And so he's honed it in. He's doing bees full time now. And I've kind of been following his pattern a little bit with these splits I made this year. I started off with the 20 splits I made with the Hawaiian queens early, fed them like crazy, built them up, added a second deep. They moved right up into that, filled that one up. So I had 2 full double deeps of bees brood, as you'll see in the video that's going to drop probably tomorrow. And then I pulled off that top box, and I had so many cells that took from my first graft, more than I thought would. So I went ahead and made splits using those, and I left the queen in the original spot and with plenty of brood and everything in there. So hopefully they'll explode up in and start putting some honey in there. And I actually added a couple of honey supers to each of those boxes that had the queen in them, and then hopefully these other ones will get mated. And so I'm trying to, that's kind of how you can grow quickly, especially if you have mated queens. And so we'll see what happens. But that he has a really consistent thing going. He's kind of figured out how to do that. And obviously we all have some weaker colonies and some stronger colonies, but that is kind of the ultimate goal, isn't it? Both of you guys, I'm sure, would agree, and everyone in the chat, you want to have consistent colonies that are productive, gentle, and disease resistant. So, I mean, when we can figure that out, we'll be in good, good honey producers.
Handy.
Yeah.
It's pretty handy to have bees alive in the spring. I mean, you've got
it helps.
It helps. So it's like, what can we do to make sure that we always have bees? But they'll humble you one way or the other. Bruce, we're talking about consistency, and I think one thing for me that comes to mind, the biggest thing that we did over the last probably 2 or 3 years consistently that is really paying off is solstice queens, because it's putting us in a scenario right now where, like, I don't have swarm cells yet. They've got drones, but we're still probably 10 to 14 days away from seeing an enormous amount of that. Now we've got a lot of colonies that are fresh queens, that are fresh solstice queens from last year, and we still have a bunch of yellow dot queens running around, and those ones are more apt to do that. But to me, it's really paying off to try to get, 50 to 75% of your operation requeened every year that are those solstice queens. That's one less thing that it seems like I've got to worry about. They seem to be overwintering very well, and they're just less flighty, it seems, in the spring. But Brian, what about you? What is something that you feel like you've been consistent with that you feel like is really paying off for you? Or maybe what's something you've been inconsistent with that's really biting you in the butt?
Yeah. I've kept over the last, I'd say, 2 seasons or so. I could say honest, I've been consistent with my supplements.
Yep.
And that's really paid off. I mean, you once you get that dialed in and you know when to put it, and then truly when the bees don't need it at all, I've seen colonies much larger than I used to see this time of year. So, that helps out then. Hey, if you want to grow your apiary and you've got these monstrous colonies, well, split them. If have these monster colonies and you want a good honey crop, put in the work and get that good honey crop. So I'd say the supplements that I use probably have been one of those game changers for me,
Yeah.
at least in my consistency. So,
Bruce, what about you?
What was the question?
Come on, Bruce, this is your night. You're caught up in the chats,
about
man.
About consistency.
Bruce, the time is now. So
talking about consistency, I just ditto.
Okay. Terrific.
No, I agree. I really honestly, Brian, I want to figure out how you do that, man. You got to tell me how you do that.
I don't know how I do it.
I was trying to read and star some of the questions and everything in here. So tell me again,
Next
what
question,
was the question? Yeah.
Moving right along.
Bruce has been consistent with remembering every question that he has asked.
I'm not remembering.
Bruce,
I'm trying to start.
You want to take some questions, Bruce? Here. But
yeah, let's take a few questions. Let's go back up towards the beginning. And once again, if we miss your question, if we didn't get it, you can re-put it in here. David's Bee Farm. Let's see. This is a good question. Hey guys, talk about when to super and the effects of adding too many supers.
Go ahead, Bruce. Take that one.
What I do typically is I try to make sure, I try to just make sure the bees have enough space. What you hear always is like if you're starting a beehive, if you're starting a colony of bees, you start your package or your nuke and you let them grow into an 8 or 10 frame box until there's 80% of the frames are drawn out and covered. Add the second box and you go right up that way. I think that also applies to honey supers in a sense, but what I do typically is I just kind of really try to manage the space. I try to manage the brood areas through the point to where I feel like we're getting close to a honey flow. And then I'll start stacking some honey supers on it. Depends on the strength of a colony. If you have a colony that's packed out with bees, I think whether it's a single deep or a double deep, it's just packed out with, bees all over the tops of the frames. And it's just full, you take the lid off and you watch it for a little while and you can't even see the frames anymore because the bees come up. I would say in that case, you could probably easily add a couple of supers on there. I think it does depend also on whether it's comb or foundation. Sometimes I think if it's just foundation, you don't want. There's two methods I use to actually get foundation drawn out. I've got some of that going on right now. I've got quite a bit of drawn comb, and so the way you make a lot of honey fast is just stack comb on there, and they'll fill that up really quickly when the honey flow starts. But one thing that I found, I learned this from Tim Ives years ago, is I'll put a box of foundation on top of the brood, and then I'll put some comb above that. And they tend to have to walk across that foundation. And sometimes they'll just go up there and they'll start packing the honey in the comb and they'll just almost skip the foundation. But in a good flow, you've got your bees, you got your hoarders that want to store the honey. And then you also have the wax bees, the wax building bees or the wax creating bees. and they've got to have something to do with that wax. And so you want to give them something to do as well. And so that's the way you can really get that foundation drawn out during a flow, is to do that. And what I found would happen is, I used to do it that way, and I've got some done that way now, is it seems like the queen loves to lay in that brand new drawn out foundation. And so they'll tend to move up into that a little bit. I don't put a queen excluder in to start off with. If you want to keep it totally clean, you kind of have to use a queen excluder, but I usually let them start working those supers a little bit before I put the queen excluder in, to make sure they're going to go up there. And but if that queen starts laying eggs up there, you can come in then and put the queen excluder in, or you can put slap another box of foundation down there, and that brood will emerge, and then they'll backfill it with honey. And so that's kind of what I do. But as far as how many boxes to put on, if it's like a mediocre colony, like a single deep mediocre, I may just put one super on there. But if it's a good, big, strong double deep or plus or minus colony, I'll stack 2-3 supers on there sometimes, especially if I anticipate a good flow. You can go back a couple of weeks later and check, and if they're just not working the top box, you can move it to another strong colony, or you can just take it off. But I like to give them plenty of room when that honey flow starts. If you just put like one box on at a time, you need to watch them close, because in a really good flow, at least around here, they'll fill a box up and have it capped in a week, and then they'll start backfilling, and they might even get honey bound. And so in a really good flow, you want to make sure they have some space to move up. Another thing to consider is under supering versus over supering. To me, under supering means that the boxes that are full of honey, you keep on the top. And if you add another super, you put it underneath. And the theory there is that they don't have to, go up as far to get to the honey. And I've had success doing it both ways. It really just depends on how much work I want to do. But I think they may fill up under supering a little quicker, possibly, if you do it that way, because they don't have as far to go. But those are some things to consider. Mm-hmm. And then what I always do is when I'm looking about 2 to 3 weeks out from at least 2 to 3 weeks out from the actual harvest, I go through and I determine how far down into that beehive I need to go, how far down I want to pull honey from, and then I'll slap a queen excluder right where I want that level to be. And then if you give them 3 weeks, that'll give the bees a chance to emerge. If there is any brood up there above that queen excluder, it can emerge. They can backfill it with honey. So when you harvest it, you'll have nothing but honey. You won't be harvesting brood. One more thing to consider: if there's any drone brood in that column up there, you got to make sure those drones have a way to get out of there. If you have a tight colony, if you put a queen excluder and there's some drone brood up there, those drones emerge and you got it sealed up top. Those drones cannot get out, and I've had them both. I've had it happen to where I take the lid off and the drones come flying out. I've had it happen to where you get down by the queen excluder all hanging out there. I've also had it, I think I've seen it, where the drones have tried to get through that queen excluder and they get their heads caught in there, and you just got a bunch of dead drones in there that are kind of decomposed in there. So you just want to make sure they've got a way to escape, whether it be I like to put an upper entrance in there. Like if I got 2 or 3 boxes stacked, I'll slide the top box forward a little bit, so there's a little space up there. I think that helps with ventilation, and it gives them an upper entrance if they want to use it, and it also gives the drones a place to escape. So how's that for how I do it? Honey is that's my sweet. That's what I love. I enjoy the honey part of it as much as anything, and so I've really tried to kind of hone in on that and figure out the ways to maximize our honey flow down here. So that's kind of what I do.
Good answer,
Brian,
Bruce.
What about you guys? Any further comments on that?
I do a lot similar. Now I don't harvest near the amount of honey that you do, but I do similar. For my strong colonies, what I tend to do when I am putting supers on them, I just automatically put 2. It's just always what I do. I'd rather they have that room, because if it is in a very strong flow, like you said, you could risk, if I only throw 1 up there, then you're going to risk, them getting all honey bound, and then you're going to have just compounded problems. So it's always 2. Now there's times where, like last year in the fall, where I thought we were just going to have this just spectacular flow. Everything was kind of setting up that way, and then it fizzled out because of lack of rain. where I had colonies that were bringing in a little bit, but not much, I just removed out, removed a top box off. I mean,
That's right.
I'd rather add more than needed right away. It's not going to hurt.
Yeah, you can get in trouble pretty quickly if they fill them up fast, like they do here on a good tallow flow. They'll fill them up so fast they don't have anywhere to put it, and they'll just pack the honey. They'll fill it up to the top, and they start backing down, and before you know it, they'll have like 3 frames they can lay in the bottom box. And so before you know it, there's a lot of bees in there, and then there's no bees because there's no place for the queen to lay. And so you can get in trouble in a hurry in a really good flow. So I think it's best to have almost too much space during a really good honey flow as opposed to not enough space. It doesn't hurt if you need 2 boxes and you have 3, that third box just won't get full. It's not going to hurt anything. So that's kind of what I do. But man, I've had a lot of issues, I think, in the past when I didn't have enough boxes on the colonies where they got honey bound. I think that's been one reason I've lost a lot of colonies during this summer, because right when you take the honey off, they're honey bound, and that's right at the peak time for varroa mites and for hive beetles. And it's just a perfect storm. So I'm still not perfect at it, but I'm getting better. And now I have enough comb and enough supers that I can keep them stacked up pretty good typically. And so that's kind of where I'm at with that.
I think question, that's the move. And a lot of folks, maybe if you haven't considered that, what's nice about that, especially with under supering, is what's the worst to happen? They don't have a honey box on that bottom under super, but they're drawing it out. And so if you're taking a super or 2 off, you can pull that, leave the box below that they're still working on drawing, and then they may just finish out on that for the next 2 to 3, 4 weeks. They just draw it out and then slowly start to store, but they've got that extra headroom. Now when you go in or you're pulling supers, you're pulling and not worrying about, okay, I got to pull this off. I got to quickly go spin it and throw something back on there because they don't have any room. They don't have any boxes. So that's a good tips.
And it does become difficult if you don't have a lot of equipment, and we've all been through that. And still, if we grow, we can get in that situation. Even now I could get in that situation. So I learned 2 years ago, I really had an issue. We had so much honey 2 years ago that I ran out of boxes, and I made a trip down. I made a trip down, and this is before I have way more now than I had then because I've built up some, but I made a trip to Bay Minette, which is just down by Mobile, and bought some equipment from a guy, David. I think it's David Brown. I think he's in the chat, or he was earlier, but he had a relative that had gotten out of the bee business. He had some health issues, and an older fella, and was able to really kind of save myself. And it was almost too late for that year, but I've been using those boxes, and still I've got plenty of boxes now. I think I've got plenty of foundation, so I can really grow into that if I need to still. So it's working out good. And people, I mean, comb is gold when it comes to with the bees, and whether it be, it's good for brood, but it's extremely good for honey production because they don't have to draw it out and put honey in. They can just stick it right in there and cap it. They'll fix the errors in the comb. Like lots of times it'll get bumped or it'll have some damage from extraction process and things like that. But those bees will clean that stuff up and fill it up so fast you can't even imagine, for those who may not have had that experience before. So let's try and plow through a few more questions here. I think this one's going to have a short answer. It's a question for you, Greg. Greg, do you ship queens?
Yes. We're sorry. No, I don't. Sorry. Yes, we ship queens right now. We're sold out on all of the pre-order queens. I think for the rest of the year, we hope to have 50 to 100 extra a week. And then if we do, then you'll see those mostly on our socials. We may talk about them here. If you're interested in getting on the list for our Appalachian mutts, which is predominantly a Caucasian carny line, you may have heard folks refer to them as the Pepto Pinks. Shoot us a message. We'll get you on the list to call when we have the extras. And then also we've got one that we're kind of, fooling around with. When I say fooling around with, I mean, we're not, I'm not I don't have 5 or 6 cell starters a week dedicated to this specific line, which is the Appalachian Mite Mauler. But we're optimistic on that. I like what we're seeing so far. And we may turn a few of those loose this year if we continue to see them hit the marks that we're looking for. Those are going to kind of be off the menu queens. And if we get around to it this year, we may have some inseminated queens available a little bit later this year. But right now, we're more focused on making sure that we're dialing in our genetics here, that they're consistent, uniform, and then we'll worry about having inseminated queens on the menu a little bit later on. So definitely stay tuned. Shoot us a message if you want to get on the call list for when we do have extras or any off menu offerings like the Appalachian Mite Maulers.
Good stuff, Greg. Couple of questions are related here to mite washes. What is the earliest you're doing mite washes in your 3 areas? And the follow-up question that I would say to that would be, how often throughout the season do you guys check for mites, and what are your preferred methods? And so those are kind of related. So Greg, you might be a good one to field that one first.
I say early, as far as earliest in the calendar year, Bruce would probably be the first to really get on that. I'd be the second, followed by Brian. But I think if and I shouldn't laugh, but if you are washing colonies right now and you're already at 3% mite loads, you've really got to think about your program and why they've gotten that bad so quick. Right now, we will be doing washes, of course. And that's a part of our selection for queens. It's not a silver bullet. There's lots of other metrics, assays, and tests that we can do that show different things that we want to see about the bees. But the mite wash is something that we consistently use as a metric that gives us a glimpse into a certain aspect of what's going on with the bees. So we will be doing that. Not so much for whether it's time to treat them or not, but it's a follow-up from the fall on what was the overall picture health of the bees in the fall versus what is it in the spring? Has it gotten better? Has it gotten worse? Has it stayed the same? That helps us kind of continue to fine-tune and refine which queens will carry the torch forward for this year for our customers, and what will be the ones that will be that second year queen next year. So how early in the year? We're going to be right around flow time or so, because what I like to do is make sure we get capture that early spring, summer flow, and then start getting into getting those treatments on at that time, rather than if you are putting treatments on too early and if you don't know if you need it or not, you may be sacrificing or capturing or harvesting that flow or that honey because you've got something in the colony that maybe shouldn't be at the time that you've got supers. There are definitely treating opportunities like oxalic acid and things, vaporizers like the Instant Vap, things that make a lot of sense at the right time of year and early in the year for cleanup. But we could talk way more about that and why we would be treating some colonies now versus waiting just a little bit longer until the timing is right. What I can say about timing is, look at that. You can't see that. That was the, I can go get stung. I don't care how many times and not be affected. But this mosquito has taken a piece out of my hindquarters 3 or 4 times while we've been on here tonight. And I think I'm already swelling up from one little mosquito bite.
I have a much worse reaction to mosquitoes than I do bee sting.
Wow.
They just tear, especially if they get in my legs, man, they just tear me up. So I down here, I would say very similar, Greg. I think I did a pretty good job last year of getting them under control, the mites. I really washed some really clean washes, and I treated them pretty consistently throughout the winter with oxalic acid vapor. I have not checked mine yet. I probably should. But as far as how early down here, you can probably check them just about any time, because there's always going to be a warm enough day you could do it, and never gets like cold for long periods of time. But I think it's a good idea to do it early in the spring if you can, and then adjust your treatments appropriately. Obviously, early in the spring, you can use things like Formic Pro if you need to, because the temperatures are okay. But you get on into the summertime, and you gotta adjust your treatments. It needs to be something that can be more heat resistant, because it gets so hot here in the summertime. But that's kind of what I would say. I think there's really not a time that's too early to check for mites down here or too late. I think you can just kind of monitor that as you go along. I probably don't check mine as often as I should, but before I do my treatments, I do try to take a check, at least do a cross section of my hives and check at least some of them and see where they're at. And I try to do a follow up afterwards and see what the results were. And we could do an entire chat on just mite treatments and how to treat for pests. Maybe we need to do that here soon, but we can't.
Maybe that'd be a good topic. I think the main thing to think about is why would you do that? What's going to be the big determining factor is how many, if you're checking early in the year, what you're looking at is just saying, okay, when I've got very little brood, how much mite carryover am I having through the wintertime? That could tell you something, but one round of oxalic acid at the right time of year would nearly knock that out of the equation. I think what folks may consider is you're going to be doing these washes or checking whatever your metric is when they're the most vulnerable, which is when you've got a lot of drones that are really starting to creep up. And one of the easiest things that we can do when you're cracking those boxes early, like in that video that we just put out, that was from I think, was it March the 12th or early in March, that video that we just put it out. But when you crack boxes and you're finding drones, you're uncapping drones stuck between boxes, it's a beautiful time just to quickly go through, take off all the wax off those drones and just look and see how many mites are you seeing, if any. When you see that you're not finding any mites at all in 30, 40, or 50 of those drones, that gives you a pretty good idea that, okay, we're in good shape for now. But if you start seeing mites, after lots of mites being carried in the drones early on, I think that's going to cue you in, hey, let's take a little deeper dive and get a bigger picture on what's going on here. What do you think, Brian?
No, I agree with that. And yesterday, literally, when I was going through my colonies and I was breaking that brood, that's literally what I was doing, was just looking through real quick, because like you said, if you're going through and you're seeing that brood and you've got mites crawling all over that drone brood this time of year, oh my gosh, that'd probably stress me out.
Yeah.
More than anything, this time of year, that would stress me out. Now,
and that is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
If it was later in the season when, they are at their peak, well, it's still going to stress me out, but not quite as bad. So,
well, we do have, they start packing the drones in pretty quick here. We get drones early in the year, and I do pay close attention. I'm real vigilant on that. Oh man, thanks so much, Connor.
Thank you, Connor.
That's awesome.
Good to see you in here.
He says, I don't have any questions tonight. I just wanted to express gratitude and wish everyone well. Happy beekeeping. Connor's had an interesting year this year. He was over in Israel, and now he's back in the States. And man, if you can go watch his channel a little bit, see, he was out there actually with planes and helicopters flying overhead, going back and forth to the war zone. So that was pretty interesting to hear. You could hear him in the background, and he'd look up occasionally. But thanks so much, Connor. We also had a super chat from Brian Lee for $20, and I'll go ahead and answer this question real quick before we move on. How are your grafted queens doing? Still have dibs on any extras? And Brian, they are currently in the colonies. I have no idea how they're doing, and we're going to find out soon enough. A video is going to drop probably tomorrow, possibly Friday, of the process I did to take them out of the cell builder, make the splits, and then put them in the splits. And so I think it's a really good video. I enjoyed editing it, and it turned out better than I thought it might turn out. And so hopefully folks will take a look at that. It's a little bit longer, but it has it could be 3 videos in one very easily. So I've started doing more videos where I kind of include more steps of the process. I used to break every step down, but I think that gives people kind of a better idea of ability to follow kind of what I'm doing. And hopefully it makes sense what I did. Need to kind of move quickly through just a few more questions here. This is a good question. I want to just kind of read this question. There are some good and interesting answers in here.
Yeah.
The people in the comments may have answered the question, but we're going to whip through this real quick. How do you get rid of dragonflies, in all caps? And let's just read some of the responses here, and then we'll let you guys comment on it. Dragonflies are tough, but I use 12 gauge with number 8 or 9 birdshot. Harder than dove hunting, but effective. Nice. Russell Koopman says shotgun. And
seems like par for the course right there.
Another dragonfly trick is someone told me, I haven't tried it, is to place a thin stick near an area where something sticky on top. He said they love landing on the tip of the stick while hunting your queens. So I don't know if there's any. I've never thought of tricks to kill dragonflies, but I think it is they can be a real problem. I don't know that I've had that much of a problem where my bees are. There are a few dragonflies around. Most of my bees are near bodies of water, and so. Greg, have you found anything to work or be effective for that, or have you just
but you know where my mind's going is Yosemite Sam out there in the bee yard. Your neighbors already think you're all crazy as it is for being beekeepers, and they see you out there, with two pistols, a snake shot, and they're cussing at dragonflies and shooting in the air everywhere you go. That'd be a funny video. You know what I would do? We had a similar issue. If an old like a Ruger long barrel 22 revolver with some snake shot or varmint load in it, that would be pretty effective, and then would be fun. You can just holster it, and when you're out there, boom goes the dynamite.
Man, I hope I have this thing on my YouTube channel saved. There's a guy in North Carolina years and years ago. His name was Old Cephas, and he was money with the slingshot. And I got to dig up that video. I got to dig up that video and put it on my community. It is one of the coolest videos. It may be my favorite YouTube video of all time. It is just so country, and so the guy reminded me of my father-in-law a little bit, of my wife's dad. He just a old tough country boy that just he actually took a June beetle off of a corn stalk or something with that slingshot from he's just incredible. He'd throw up a quarter and he could hit it he'd throw up in the air and he'd hit it with the slingshot, and he was incredible. So that's how they used to eat when he was a kid. Like, he'd go out and he'd kill rabbits with a slingshot. So it's pretty interesting.
We had dragonflies in my area a couple years ago. It's been about 4 or so years ago, 5 years ago, that the local airport, Youngstown Warren, regional airport, they were showing up on the radar at the airport, these patterns of dragonflies. We had so many, and it made, I would look out into the field and you would just see literally hundreds of them. And it's like, what are you going to do? So can't really do anything, but yeah.
Well, I like all the ideas that they've mentioned. Brian Lee mentioned tennis racket is effective. That's really good too, Brian, for carpenter bees. You can get out there with a tennis racket and take out some carpenter bees.
But this is one of the ask me how I knows. If you do that, all right, calm yourself and just pretend you're like this ninja approach where it's deliberate swings, right? Oh, yeah. Don't do it out of hatred, because when you start swinging out of hatred, let's face it, most of us, the target audience is 45 to 75-year-old men. Guys, let's face it. You start swinging out of hatred on carpenter bees or dragonflies with a tennis racket that's probably too small as it is, you're going to throw something out. That's Ask Me How I Know.
Well, it works. It's effective. We've done that, but for the carpenter bees, those little carpenter bee traps work really well. You can hang up too. But we need to kind of whip through here, Brian. Cass, it says here for Brian, question for Brian, Queen Right dial. Yeah. Any updates on the Queen Right dial?
So Tom, yes. If you want to see them at Nature's Image Farm, you will see them at Nature's Image Farm. We also, I don't know when they are going to have things on their website or anything like that, but Apame is also, they do have some. So, whenever that's going to take place, that's up to Corhan. Guardian is going to have a promo here coming up very soon as well. So there's a couple, different folks where you're going to see the Queen Right dial. So yeah, more to come too. So just keep your ear out.
Yeah. Roy says, we hope PETA is not listening about killing dragonflies on the live stream. So I hope not too.
Are they also kind of protected?
Yeah, they are.
No idea. Dragon.
Anyway, PETA, you know who PETA is, right? You guys know who PETA is. Anyway.
Dragonflies are protected?
No, I doubt it. I'm sure they're not. It
No.
was a joke. I think it's a
I was about
joke.
to say, what the? Huh.
So I know we're getting kind of down to the end of our time that we have available tonight, but here's another question. Best way to introduce a virgin queen. And I'll tell you, I actually, if you look at Stevens Bee Company, Corey's website, I think just today or maybe it was recently, he posted kind of a method that he uses. It's a little bit of a variation on what he used to teach. It's a similar principle. But basically he just the theory is that you make sure that thing is queenless, no chance of making a queen before you put that virgin in there. So you need to break out the splits about 8 days before. Break down any cells, any attempts they've made to make a queen. And then the way he does it, he introduces the virgin queen in a queen cage, and they chew through the candy pretty quickly then, and she gets mated. But a different method today. You can go to Stevens Bee Company and look at how he recommended it. He's selling his queens a little bit differently now, but I don't think we really have time to go into all that, and I might not explain it very well anyway. I also did an interview with Corey Stevens a year ago where it's on my channel I think it's under Intentional Beekeeping, my playlist, where we talked about his method of introducing virgins. So that he did a really good job of explaining that. So I would recommend you go watch that and just kind of look at Stevens Bee Company, because that's what he does. He does virgin queen introduction. That's how he does his queens. And so he is kind of, I would say, I don't know if you want to call him the expert on that, since that's what he does. Anything to add to that, Greg and Brian? I know Corey's kind of the guru on that. That's just what he does. That's how he does his thing.
I'd say the best way to introduce a virgin queen is to get her mated first. But if whatever you do, when you fall into that first 3-day window of a virgin queen, you have so many more opportunities than when she gets into that 3rd, 4th, 5th, the 10th day. When you're working with insemination, of course, we were intentionally working with virgins and reintroductions, and it gets very complicated. But if you, I'll leave it at that for now, because that's a whole entire thing. So the short answer, the best way, get her mated first.
Yeah, put a cell in there as your preferred method, right? Use a cell. Yeah. 2 more questions, and I think we'll start to wrap it up here. Jonathan Bennett, and this is probably don't have a lot of time to talk about this, Greg, tonight, but do you have any plans to use the UBO in selection of your line, or do you have any plans to use UBO in your operation?
I think UBO is a potential tool for an overall much bigger job. So it'll be something that we'll be looking at, but will not be the only metric that we look for producing good quality queens.
I think I agree. I think it's a really good tool, but it's just a tool. I agree with that. Here's a question about, actually, I think hive management. Getting 2 nukes in May. What time of day is best to move nuke frames to the new hive box? It's a good question. So someone's a brand new beekeeper getting a couple of nukes. What time of day would be best to move those things over into the new box?
What do you think, Brian?
I literally do that whenever I have time to do it. I don't. It'd be hard for me to work into my daily schedule. Hey, I've got to do this at a certain specific time. So literally, whenever I get a nuke, or like whenever I get packages, anything like that, I do it when I have time to go over. That's it. Yeah. I mean, that's just how I do it. Whether that's the best, answer, that's just what I do.
As soon as you can, I think. I wouldn't be worried about best time of day. If you're installing 2 or more in the same yard, same goes with packages. What I would do is time the release. So if you're installing 2 nukes, I would put one in right away. Let them, you'll notice right immediately, they'll go into the new box, they'll start flying out, they'll reorient. You'll be scared at first. Oh my gosh, is this new nuke swarming? They're going to go through this quick orientation kind of a thing. Let the first one do that and settle down and slow up. And then once they're settled in, then maybe consider moving the second one into its box. If you put both of them in at the same time, you will definitely have drift, and there'll be some back and forth. So I would just time it, is what I would do.
Yeah, and that can also, it also may depend on how close they are to each other. If they're right there together, But if they're across the yard or a few feet away, it may not be as big a deal. But
Right.
a good thing that may work and may help you and is to and I've done this before. I don't usually do this, but you could set your colonies up, your new hives up, especially if they have a flat lid, and you could bring the nukes and set them on top of those boxes for a day or two and just let the bees get oriented to that spot. And then you could take the lid off and drop the nukes in there, and they'll be oriented to that basic spot. They'll be a little confused at first because they'll be trying to enter higher than the bottom entrance, but it won't take them long to figure out where they are. And that's a really good plan. I think that will work well. Just set them on top of that new hive. Just let them sit there a couple of days in the nuke boxes, and then place them inside the new 8 or 10 frame box that you have. Another question on that, though, I think that would be good. There's a couple different ways to introduce nukes, and I think temperature plays a role in that, and the honey flow plays a role in that. I think what most people would tell you is, push the frames in the original box to the outside and then drop the nuke in the middle, or probably better drop the nuke in the middle and then put the frames in on the outside. That's what I think most people would tell you, probably the safest thing to do. But I have, during certain times of the year, I've just kind of checkerboarded everything in alternative frames, and they'll draw that out pretty quickly too. But you don't want to do that when it's cold or early spring, or you don't want to split that brood up at all if there's any issues with the temperature or any dangers of that. But so I've done it both ways. I've had really good success. I've done a lot of checkerboarding over the years, but I think the safest thing to do is just drop the nuke in the middle, and I'll let them build it from the inside out. What do you think about that, Greg? Any thoughts on that?
Well, if you're buying a nuke or building a nuke, is a little different. If you're buying a nuke, it should be 5 frames. That's going to vary wildly across the country. But how we send our nukes out is 3 frames of a combination of eggs, larvae, and brood food, and then one that they're sort of working on, have a little bit of room to grow. I like to do is, ideally you'd have 3 frames of brood right in the center of your transfer, a fresh frame of foundation on the outside of that, and then the other 2 frames that came from your nuke on the outside of that, and then fill the rest of the box up with frames, just to checkerboard it slightly, but keep the open brood warm and in the middle, and then checkerboard between your sealed brood and your honey or food or resource frames that came out of the nuke.
Brian, any thoughts on that?
I've only messed with nukes one time, so I tend to just always get packages. I can tell you how to put a package in, but nukes, that's not my forte.
Well, let's hold that to another chat. I think that might be a good topic. We might have just hit up on a topic, introducing packages, nukes. Right now is the time of the year when people are getting their bees, they're catching swarms. How do you manage new swarms? How do you introduce packages? How do you introduce nukes? What do you look for in a package? What do you look for in a nuke, queens, all those things? So that might be a topic we could address in a future video. I'd like to go back and just recognize everyone who has pitched in tonight on the super chats, and everyone who's been in here. We really appreciate you. Starting off, Brian, thanks so much for the $20 super chat. And Matt Kirkland, thanks again for the $10 super sticker. Greg, thanks for the super chat. We have Stan Gore, thank you so much for that $50 super chat. Freedom Apiaries, once again, got your first new packages in. They're doing well. Thanks so much for contributing tonight. Brian Lee, great friend from right down here in Alabama. Just was texting him. I think it was today. We were texting back and forth a little bit. We text all the time, call quite often. Great guy. He's a big supporter of the channel. Connor from Brown and Daughters Honey Apiaries. Thanks so much, my friend. I really appreciate it. And then we have Toe River Honey. My mouse is messing up here. Toe River Honey, thanks so much for the super chat. We really appreciate everyone who comes in here, whether or not you're able to donate a super chat or anything like that. Just thanks so much for your support for this community and for all that you do, and for watching our videos and joining us for the stream team. Kind of start to wrap this thing up. Brian, we'll let you go first. Kind of what you got coming up in the coming days and over the next week or so. What are your plans with the bees, with your channel? Anything coming up? And then I'll go next, and then we'll let Greg bring it on home.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting some bees from Greg this weekend. So, wow, look at that. I know. So that'll be fun. That'll be exciting.
Brian, we missed you. Brian, are you there?
Oh yeah, I'm here.
I think Bruce is freezing up there. There it is.
Yeah, there he goes. All right.
Am I freezing up, or you guys? Okay, I thought you guys were freezing up. Okay.
It's always fun getting new stock. So let me get some bees from Greg, and I'll probably just keep tabs on things and see how they're taking, the pollen patties, and just, this next week will probably be look at all of my equipment, get an inventory, see if I need anything, and just make sure that everything is in place, because last minute when I'm doing any splits or anything like that, I mean, could I drive the 2 hours and go down to Greg's and get the stuff? Yes, but I'd rather be prepared. That way, when I'm doing it, I somewhat have a plan and I'm not all scatterbrained. So, I'll do that. But I just this morning did an interview with somebody that probably probably another day or so I'll have that out. I was able to sit and do an interview with Randy Oliver. That was super cool. It was for him to take, probably about an hour's time was pretty darn cool. So I'll have that out. Probably, like I said, probably sooner than later. Just it was a very smooth interview with not a lot of ums and so's and all that kind of stuff. So that makes it easy to edit. But and then I got another product that I got to do a video on too. So it's going to start to get to that busy time. So
here we go. Like I say, ready or not, here we go. Right, name of the video tonight.
Yeah.
The time is here, just right now. So let's go. Thanks, Ethan Hall, for the super chat, and I'd like to quickly address one more question here. Had a super chat from I'm gonna have to use my mouse is messing up. Brian Mater, Brian J. Mater, styrofoam queen breeding mating nukes, are they worth it? Greg, what do you think on that? You're the queen breeder in here.
This is not just my opinion. It's folks that I trust that raise great queens. There's something to be said about not pulling queens until they have enough sealed brood in a colony for them to mature and to kind of come into that mature, a certain essence of a queen. Once that happens, the big trouble you have with many mating styrofoam nukes is when you are literally trying to get an idea of a queen on 3 little frames this size. It is extremely problematic. What I've seen, and we trialed it, and I try not to. I want to be careful how I say this, because there are a lot of folks who are raising queens on 3 miniature frame sets and mini styrofoam nukes. Hey, if that's for you and your operation and that's working, great. We ran a trial. I decided to keep that information to myself because it didn't paint those types of nukes in a very flattering light. And there are so many folks that we know that raise queens in those systems. In short, what we found is that it is nearly impossible to raise a quality queen in a mini styrofoam nuke, because you've got to pull queens so quick. They are plugging out so fast. They're swarming so quick. It is really hard to get those queens past 14 and 17 days. And I'm a firm believer on 21-day, the 35-day queens, sealed brood. Very difficult, if not nearly impossible, to do that on minis without extremely intensive management that I don't think happens a lot. Try it for yourself. See what happens. What we found is that, yeah, you can raise a lot of queens quickly and you can get a few extra cycles a year. The problem you run into is extreme supersedure and extreme acceptance issues. That's what we found. That was our experience. So
yeah, I think everyone has to try on their own, but it just seems like, I know a lot of people do that, and it's like you said, Greg, it works for them, but it just seems like they would need a little more time to me. Carol J. McCarthy Logsden, thanks for the $20 super chat. Another great show, guys. Thanks for all the chats. Had our first swarm yesterday here in Indiana. Things are happening out there. It's go time.
That's
the time
right.
is now. So Bruce, as far as Bruce's bees is concerned, we're just going to keep rocking and rolling. I've got my hives, I think, pretty much set up for the next week or two. We got the honey super stacked on. I'm going to just leave the cells. Someone asked about my cells earlier. They are in the hives. This from my graphs. I don't know what the results are going to be. I don't know how viable the cells were. They looked pretty, but we'll just see how they look. It's a completely new experience for me. I did a little bit of grafting or tried to make some queens many years ago with just limited success. And so for me to get a 26 out of 30 take on the cells was pretty amazing. And but I don't know how viable the cells are, what kind of queens we're going to end up with, but we're going to find out. There's plenty of drones around. There's plenty of opportunities if the virgin queens emerged, if they were fed well, if they're well developed, and if they emerge and get mated, there's plenty of opportunities for drones to mate with. So we'll just see what we end up with here in the next probably couple of weeks. I'm going to leave them in there for 3 to 4 weeks and then go check and see what I have. And but we'll see. There's a couple things I had to do that weren't ideal. And in my video that's just going to drop probably tomorrow, you'll see kind of what some of those things were. But overall, I was pretty excited about it. And for the first run, I think it went pretty well. But that's coming out. A couple of videos coming out. The honey flow, the privet is just starting to break forth and bloom. And when that happens, that is a sign that we've got a honey flow coming. And so for about the next 2.5 months, it's really game on here as far as honey goes. And then we'll be back into the old, let's keep them alive until next year mode. So we got a couple of you have about 4 to 5 months here in Alabama that are really fun when the bees are building up and when they're packing honey in and when everything's going gangbusters and the bees are happy, the birds are chirping, everything's really nice. And then it gets into it's difficult. But for right now, we're pretty happy around here. So that's what's coming up. Just watch the channel for some upcoming videos. I have footage for 3 videos I'm working on now. One's going to drop probably tomorrow. Excellent. Greg, why don't you bring it on home, man?
Well, we appreciate everyone spending time with us tonight. It's always fun to hear folks chiming in and kind of where they're at with their journey. I just want to remind folks that, beekeeping is a journey. The journey is yours and yours alone. The things that you hear us talking about and sharing our experience with bees, the things that we do, we try to focus on talking about why we do these things rather than just saying, we do this, you should too. That's really important to consider as you move forward and put together and build your program for your bees, as you build your operation, whether it's 1 colony or 1,000. The journey is yours and yours alone. What type of nuke you raise, how you raise queens, if you raise queens, when you put supplements on, if you put supplements, that's for you to choose. What we are our goal is to just share what we're doing, but more importantly, the why behind it. And I think we've done a pretty good job over the last few years sharing the context behind who we are as beekeepers and how that impacts the choices that we make and what we actually do in our apiaries. And so we hope that you guys find that valuable, informative, if not anything else, entertaining. So we really appreciate you guys. We've been trying to really start to sort and sift and filter and figure where are we spending our time this year. We just put out a quick video. I mean, it is rough cut, windy. It is not a cinematic beekeeping journey video like I love to put out, but it's a rough cut. Just what are we doing in the colony? We just put that out, checking in on those Appalachian mite maulers is what we're calling that line of bees. I really appreciate all the comments and folks taking time to watch that. Part 2 will come out soon, with just a couple weeks later. And we're going to try to do more videos this year where it's me digging in some hives, just talking through what I'm looking at, what I'm doing, why. And I don't know that it's going to be the full cinematic quality and the things that I like to do. As Joel Salatin has kind of coined the phrase, at least as where I first heard it, is you can't let perfect be the enemy of good. And so we just want to make sure that we are sharing our experience, getting more of those kind of videos out. So I think you can expect to see a lot more of that this year. And so hope you guys find that valuable. I want to thank all of our customers, our community. It's been a tremendous year so far. We're getting ready to head out to go pick up another round of bee packages. That'll be our second of 3. We've got one more round coming up. This one, of course, is sold out. We've got another route pickup for April 27th. If you're interested and you want to stop by Nature's Image Farm to pick up your bees and be a part of this community here, we invite you. We would love to have you. We have folks coming from literally all over the country, 8, 10, 12 hours away to pick up 1 or 2 nukes just to be a part of this community, just to say thanks for what we do here. And so for that, we want to express our sincerest thank you and gratitude for everybody who supports not only Nature's Image Farm, but supports the stream team, Bruce's Bees, Castle Hives. You guys are special. You guys mean a lot to us, and we thank you for that. If you want to learn more about what we're doing here, especially with our Endura Hive wax dipped line of equipment, packages, nukes, queens, you name it, you can visit us at naturesimagefarm.com. Fellas, next Wednesday, 8 p.m., whose channel are we on?
Oops, right there.
Okay, well, that'd be a lot of fun. So next Wednesday, 8 p.m., Nature's Image Farm YouTube channel. We'll talk about, it'll probably be about getting bees off to a really good start, what to look for with packages, what to look for with nukes. We're definitely going to be into the queen rearing season then, so maybe some queen rearing tips, cell starters, cell finishers. Who knows how the season's going to go. Bring your questions. If you would have any ideas for show topics, visit us on our Facebook group page and drop us a comment there on what you want to hear next Wednesday, 8 p.m. So we look forward to seeing you then, 8 p.m. next Wednesday on our channel. Until then, we want to remind you to be the lighthouse and be the change you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.